The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Can we get into it?
Let's get into it. Let's go. We're episode 49.
49, yeah.
Wow.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Welcome.
We're just shy of 50 here.
What?
I don't know about you, Jeff, but our podcast has officially passed me in age this week.
No, I got a couple more years. I will be 5'2". A couple more weeks, though. A couple more weeks. So thank you for hanging in there, listening.
Yes, and welcome to any new listeners we may have picked up this week. So hang in there. Tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Tell your friends. And Captain again, Marvel. We're talking Captain Marvel this week, are we not?
We are talking Captain Marvel.
I think everyone's talking Captain Marvel.
We really wanted to get this on the cusp of its release date. Sometimes we waited a week just to allow everybody to see it, but just for our own sanity and our own safety from spoilers, we had to get this in right away.
Yeah. Which, speaking of spoilers, anybody who has not listened to the show will realize pretty quickly, we spoil it.
Yes, we do. This is not like last week's episode. If you listen to the Umbrella Academy, that was like a personal mission of ours to get people to watch that show that haven't seen it or maybe wouldn't have been interested in it. So we didn't do a lot of spoilers last week just for that purpose, because we were hoping that people may want to actually watch the show after they heard us talk about it. Yeah. In this case, we're not going to do that. We feel like the Marvel Cinematic Universe does not need our help in promoting it. So
no. Although we will get into the fact that there's a fair amount of negativity out there surrounding this movie.
There is.
Long before anybody actually saw it.
Kind of put a bad taste in the mouth of a lot of people unjustly and unfairly, I think, because of the trolls out there on the internet that were offended by something or other that Brie Larson had said. They were filling up Rotten Tomatoes with bad reviews without even seeing the movie. So this kind of, when you read this just in a headline that Captain Marvel only is 40% fresh or whatever it was, it kind of puts something in the back of your head. Not us, obviously, but perhaps the general moviegoer.
Sure, who may have been excited, may have been on I got to go see this, and it's getting bad review. 98% of these people have not even seen it.
Yeah.
So there's a ridiculous amount of negative baggage that is just out there now in this fandom, and it's spilling over from Star Wars into the Marvel stuff now. It's a weird stage. It's just because on one end of the spectrum, you have these negative reviews, but then I start to see, which I almost am just as offended with, are these apologists who are just blatantly going out there and be like, I love this movie. It's the best movie I've ever seen. It's like, all right, so you're going from one extreme to the other. I don't know. It's just weird.
And I read something that Rotten Tomatoes is trying to combat this by not allowing any reviews to go up.
Yeah, they deleted. There's a whole, like a lead up section, I guess you can post. I'm looking forward to this, or I don't know what the actual section was, but yeah, they did away with it.
We were talking before. We don't really have that much news going into this episode. But I did see something this morning about Armie Hammer taking on the role of Batman in the new Justice League. Have you seen this?
I think that there's been rumors out there, but there's been speculation that any white male within a 35 to 50 age range is up for this part. I don't think that that's a bad choice. I kind of like him.
I think that when you're casting an iconic character like Batman or Superman, you really shouldn't go with a well-known actor.
Agreed.
You really want the character to outshine whoever's playing it. And I think with the case of Ben Affleck, it was the other way around. It was more like, what is Ben Affleck going to do with Batman, rather than it just being a Batman movie. It was Ben Affleck as Batman. It would be,
well, that's unfortunate because the studios, there's just too much money wrapped up in these things now. I think the studios feel the need to fill these roles with big name actors. Yeah. You know, I mean, but look at Gal Gadot. Nobody knew who she was before, and Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she tore it up. I mean, absolutely. I don't think that's a bad choice. I think one of his better movies that definitely fell under the radar was Lone Ranger.
Oh yes, I love the Lone
I
Ranger.
thought it was great. I thought it was phenomenal. But again, you get a Johnny Depp involved, and suddenly, yeah, how bizarre and how outrageous can Johnny Depp be?
That's another victim of this word of mouth in the public perception of Lone Ranger. You get a couple of really bad reviews, and then everybody assumes that it's terrible without going to see it.
Right. And so, like, people who listen to us, like, I'll never poo-poo somebody who loves a movie that I don't like, or tell you that you're stupid because you like that movie or don't like it. And, and just because I like something or don't like something doesn't mean that someone should listen to this and be like, well, Jeff didn't like it, so I'm not going to go.
Jeff, I'm going to keep what you just said as a soundbite. So maybe 2 years from now, if Mike brings up Made in Manhattan as his favorite movie, so I say, Jeff, remember what you said.
I don't think I've ever poo-pooed. On this show, have I ever poo-pooed anybody?
No, I don't think you have, no.
Mike, on the other hand, he leaves it all on the table. Refuse to watch that movie. You guys are idiots. Thanks.
Which might be a fair comment, but...
Oh, it is. Yeah. It is. I'm unapologetically in love with certain movies that I know are not good.
But, this part of the fun is watching a terrible movie. There's something of value to that, really. I
agree. And based on our discussion before we hit record, we may have a couple really bad movies coming up to review, which I'm excited for.
Tim Burton's Dumbo might be one of them. That could really go either way. That could swing wildly either way. Out of the park or just into the sewers.
So let's get into it a little bit, because I think we want, since we don't have news, do you maybe want to just talk a little bit about some of the trailers we saw?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because we are quickly going into the summer theater season. So we saw a couple big names. We'll start with Dumbo. Tim Burton. What's the last Tim Burton movie that came out?
Dark Shadows, Big Eyes. I think Big Eyes was the last Tim Burton movie that came out.
That was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's really kind of flown. And he doesn't have that big name pedigree that he did early on, I don't think. Big Eyes, I can probably tell you.
Yeah. And he seems to really be falling in the trap of doing reboots or remakes,
Right. And I will say the Planet of the Apes is the complete bottom of the barrel for him, for Danny Elfman, who is his go-to guy for soundtracks. They both just phoned it in. It was a paycheck. Horrible.
And we had Dark Shadows. That's the name
Another Johnny Depp vehicle.
Willy Wonka, he did.
Willy Wonka, yeah. Does Dumbo looks interesting? I mean, you've got a great cast. Michael Keaton used to be coming off that Spider-Man movie.
Michael Keaton used to be the Johnny Depp in Tim Burton's world, and back in the 80s. He was his go-to guy back then. Yeah.
Danny DeVito is in there as well, who just, like, you go back to Taxi, the guy doesn't age. He looks exactly the same. It's crazy.
He does. And again, another Burton graduate, the Penguin from Batman Returns, was Danny DeVito.
But are we going to get a little Timothy the Mouse?
I thought I saw a shot or two of a mouse in one of the trailers.
Okay, that makes me... I mean, because Dumbo is the shortest Disney movie. I think it's only like 40 minutes.
Yeah, I think not 40 minutes, but it's just over an hour.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. Let Tim Burton go wild. It looked like he, created a crazy little circus universe, and maybe he's back to form. Maybe there's something unique in there. I guess we'll find out. It didn't leave me wanting, like, I needed to go see this when I saw the trailer.
So so there's Dumbo. So what else?
Mentioned the missing link. I did not see that trailer during this screening, but I have seen the trailer before, and this is stop motion animation. The studio is Leica. I'm hoping I pronounced that right. And they've come out with, I think it's Coraline, Paranorman, definitely Kubo and the Two Strings, which is high on my list of just phenomenal movies. And Hugh Jackman is in this. He does a voice.
It looks like a very funny and very entertaining movie.
Yeah, a little bit of a British sense of a twist on certain. Sometimes some of these movies have a weird sense of humor. Yeah. So you got that coming out. Oh, we can talk about the one other trailer, which I sent you and Mike. It wasn't attached to this movie.
Let's talk about it.
It's a James Gunn produced, but it looks like it's directed by someone else named Gunn. So does he have brothers out there? Okay, so it looks like they're directed and written by his brothers, and he executive produced it. And it is called
Brightburn.
The concept is simple, which is, what if Superman was bad. It looks more like a little bit of a horror, but it's a kid, whether he's alien to a Midwestern mom and pops, find him, take him in, and he starts manifesting powers, but as opposed to using them for good, he gets ridiculed and decides, well, I've got these abilities to just wipe you out.
Light Bright. Yeah.
That movie coming out, Light Bright, the movie. We already have Lego.
I know, we already have Battleship, so.
Right. Which I actually thought was pretty entertaining.
I'm surprised they never came out with the Stratego.
It would be 8 hours.
But yeah, Brightburn is the name of the
Brightburn.
movie. And because James Gunn is attached to it, I was assuming that it was a DC character, but no, that's not the case. Just as James Gunn in between his Marvel and DC stints, apparently.
Yeah, and it just kind of like popped up on the radar. I've never heard of it and knew nothing about it. It doesn't look like there's any big name cast members. Cool.
And of course, we got the Godzilla King of the Monsters trailer.
They got to stop. They got to stop now. Too much. Stop. I just want to see the movie. You've already got my money. I'm invested. Stop showing me stuff.
We got a new Dark Phoenix trailer as well.
Yes, we did. And I think they're showing too much with that as well.
I know.
No, it's enough. But I'm worried about that. It was supposed to come out, I think, in the fall. And then they backed it up. But now they're just throwing like the entire movie in your face.
And I have to say that kudos for them to really try to stick with the comic book roots. But I think the Beast being so blue as he is,
it just kind of stands out
on the big screen. Maybe that you should have given him like a darker hue or something.
he's full on Smurf.
He's like furry Smurf. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, you're not shooting him in the shadows.
Yeah,
he's like standing right out. And they're using the same uniforms that were established in a recent reboot. I think it was the all new X-Men that Grant Morrison wrote. So they got the kind of like the stylized X at the top of their uniforms. So, but at least they're wearing uniforms because the other version, they really weren't.
So now we have younger versions, obviously, of Cyclops and Phoenix.
Storm.
Are we going to get a younger Wolverine eventually?
It would be nice. They have to.
Hugh Jackman can't do it forever. You might as well bring the character back.
Although it doesn't matter who they choose. He's so synonymous with this character. Once again, the angry white nerd mob's gonna rise up whoever they choose. Yeah, I can't believe that's bull. So imagine back in the day when they announced that Michael Keaton was playing Batman. They would have lost their minds.
I wasn't quite sold on that either when I first heard it, but all it took was one viewing and I was down with it.
Mr. Mom, I'm Mr. Mom. So there you go, trailers.
So let's get into it. Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. Highly anticipated Captain Marvel.
Absolutely. This is the bridge between the two Infinity War movies.
Well, that's the expectation going in because we know that, we have a month. I think they bumped up the release date of Avengers Endgame. I think it's coming out in April. So you have like a 1 month window where if you're invested in that, you have to see this movie to see how they tie together because she does become a major player. I mean, we saw that in the end credits of Infinity War to the point where they tied a little too much together. But, I mean, it steps you sit through the end credits, which is, if you watch a Marvel movie at this point, and there was a fair amount of people who got up and left in my theater. And I'm just
know. It's like, did they not know? Have they never sat through the credits before? Do they not know about
these? Go home
things?
and watch them online.
I'm not going to sit here another 2.
Right. We turn it into a game to kids that we always try and find our names in the credits. So I found 2 Chandlers.
Oh, you did? There's always a baker. There's always
a baker. So let's set us up. Let's set us up with this Captain Marvel movie, Jim.
Again, there's going to be some spoilers. So if you haven't seen this, go watch it and come back. So this movie really kind of thrusts you into the story right in the middle of it. You've got,
which I think was a brilliant choice. That was one of the things I really liked. It was a very non-conventional origin story.
And they really do a good job of setting up the whole Kree versus Skrull war, which could be very unwieldy in most people's hands.
Because there's a lot of exposition to get out there. For people coming into this Marvel universe not knowing who a Kree or a Skrull are.
Of course, then you've got the questions, well, why is this guy blue and this guy isn't? Well, right. Kree, they're different races and different creeds of Kree, just like humanity. So some would have different skin color than others. So you get into it, and it's pretty much a conventional training sequence where you have Jude Law's character,
Jan Rog,
as kind of like a mentor to Veers, who is the Captain Marvel character played by Brie Larson. So they're sparring, which you get a sense that this is something that they do often at the beginning of the movie. They're part of the same team, and Jan Rog is the head of the team. These two are Kree, which is an alien race that we've seen before. Those who watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Are familiar with the blue-skinned version of the Kree. These are mercenaries, and they're part of the Kree army that is fighting the Skrulls, a shape-shifting species that has been at war with the Kree for centuries.
And they got like alien green skin with pointy ears. So, they're the bad guys.
And they can shapeshift, which is always...
that right there is always I don't trust you.
Yeah, they're shifty. I don't trust them.
Shifty.
Yeah. So what were they warring over? Was it territory? Was it...
I don't really think that it was explained too much here. They didn't really get into it other than the fact that they've been warring for quite some time.
And they wanted to wipe each other out. So it was like a genocidal type of a war as well. Neither of them were going to be happy until the other one wasn't around anymore. In the midst of all this, Veers,
let's establish that right now. They never once, in the entire movie, refer to her as Captain Marvel.
Veers gets taken by the Skrulls, and as they're trying to read her thoughts with some fancy pants machine, it reveals some memories that have been suppressed in the back of her head. And it turns out that she is human. We don't really know this up front.
You get enough. Yeah, you get enough of the flashback. Well, see, that's a problem going into this movie. Is that, I don't know, I knew she was human going into this.
Right.
But the whole plot of them going to the planet, it was all a ruse on the Skrulls' part to get a hold of her, correct? So,
although I don't think that they knew what they had until they actually had her.
No, they were trying to extract certain information, but once they started digging, they realized that there was more going on in her head than even she realized.
So she is the key to the Skrulls this is where it gets fairly complicated. Lawson, it turns out, is played by Annette Bening. She is Carol Danvers' mentor back on Earth before Carol is taken by the Kree. Now, Lawson back on Earth is a Kree scientist who is sympathetic to the Skrulls' plight. Now, she's trying to invent this intergalactic kind of hyperdrive machine.
There's a light speed ship or something, I guess. They don't have that capability.
And she's trying to do this secretly trying to help out the Skrulls. You don't know this until the end of the movie.
Right.
Because there's a big reveal that the Skrulls aren't actually as bad as you think that they are.
What?
Because they see this kind of coming to the surface in Carol Danvers' head, they realize that this tool that Annette Bening's character had started to invent is on Earth, which they call C-35, I believe is the name.
Yes, it's something like that. Right. Yeah. It's just Terran.
Yeah, I take that every morning with my coffee, C-35.
There you go. Nice.
12. So they go back to Earth looking for this invention. Carol Danvers, or Veers, thinks that they're still the bad guys at this point, the Skrulls. They all end up heading back to Earth to try to get this hyperdrive that Annette Bening had been working on. That's where we run into Nick Fury's character. They crash down into a Blockbuster video store.
I think she landed in the Schwarzenegger section.
She did. She took out...
You had True Lies there. You had Last Action Hero. There was a bunch of Schwarzenegger movies lined up. What we're not establishing is the fact that this all takes place in the 90s.
Yeah, in 1995.
This is all prior to anything else that we've established, except for probably Captain America in the Marvel Universe. This is pre-Iron Man.
So you've got to throw anything that you know about the Infinity Stones, all the stuff that has come to pass in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you throw it out the window because this movie takes place before any of that has happened.
And what's weird is that I had people in my theater during the end credits who were genuinely confused by that idea. Now, the soundtrack is straight up 90s. I mean, there's numerous jokes, obviously Blockbuster. There's only one left on the planet now.
In Oregon, right? I read this article.
Is that where it is? Yeah.
I think it's in Bend, Oregon. Yeah.
I assumed it was like in Alaska somewhere, but no. I would think broadband's not really all that hip up there. But yeah, there's a couple throwaway jokes with 90 technology. She has to go at one point and she uses Alta Vista as a search engine when she's in the cafe. They get a hold of a CD disc and they put it in the computer, and you just see that slow little build bar. And they're all like just sitting around, and she's looking.
And she's like, "What's it doing?
What's going on? What's going on?" It goes, "It's loading," And it gets a chuckle because everybody who grew up knows that was the plight we had to deal with. This at a fingertip technology is
And this is another one of those movies where you totally get what's going on as you're watching it, but it's so hard to explain to somebody that we're assuming that you're just blank slates out there that don't know the Captain Marvel story. So as I'm trying to go through this, I'm realizing all these little plot intricacies. It's very hard to explain.
It is very hard to explain because, again, it's not like Iron Man where he's this guy, point A, point B, this happens to him, and now he has this ability, and now he's this character.
Right.
When we see her, she's already established. She's already in the Kree fighting group. And the one thing we didn't bring up, which was one of her partners within this corps, is the same guy who arrests Star-Lord in the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, really? Yes, you're right.
That's him. He's like, oh, come on, Star-Lord. He's like, who? He's like, oh, Star-Lord. Yeah, he's like a throwaway character in Guardians of the Galaxy, but you established who and what he is here. Ronan shows up.
Ronan the Accuser, and he's still,
he wasn't quite at the Accuser stage, though, right? He was just, I don't know, because
they do. At one point, Jan-Rog references the other Accusers, so he's part of a group of Accusers.
Well, that's just it. That was confusing to me because there are two of them at the end. There's two guys, and they look identical, but neither one of them look like Ronan from Guardians of the Galaxy, and I had to wait through the end credits to realize it was, in fact, the same actor.
It was the same guy. Well, he didn't have the black.
He didn't have the. Yeah, it was a weird. So it's like, is that supposed to be the same guy or not?
So all this stuff going on in the background. So basically, let's just really break down the plot to its basics. You've got a Kree-Skrull war going on in the background. Captain Marvel veers. She is Kree. Skrulls are bad guys at the beginning of the movie, so they end up going to Earth to go after the MacGuffin, which is this hyperdrive lightspeed engine that Lawson has invented. So everybody's chasing this MacGuffin.
Can we just say right now what the MacGuffin truly is? Because we need to get rid of this damn thing.
Okay.
It's in every Marvel movie. It's the Tesseract. And it's like, enough with the Tesseract. Do we need to establish where it actually came from? Anything else?
Because it makes you think, okay, now where has it been that it's now showing up here in this movie? Because the last time you saw it in the timeline, right, is Stark got it because you saw that in Iron Man 2.
Right.
Stark recovered it from the ocean floor or wherever it
fell. Yes, Captain America. Again, the timeline is a little, and again, because it's something we've already seen before, it's just, right. I just want one Marvel movie without the freaking Tesseract as the MacGuffin.
So without really going down a deep, deep rabbit hole with some plot intricacies here, I thought this was a great movie. I loved it. And just as much as I love any new Marvel movie, I don't see, with the exception of Ant-Man maybe, I'm really on the fence about still with the Ant-Man movies, but I really enjoyed it. And I thought it was a worthy successor to what's come before in terms of Black Panther, Infinity Wars. And it was very lighthearted. I loved the Nick Fury character in this movie.
He is straight up comic relief.
Everybody calls me Fury.
What does your mom call you?
Just Fury.
And this, at its core, is pretty much a buddy movie between Carol Danvers and Nick Fury.
Yeah.
And I loved the chemistry between the two of them as well. So, and the fact that they de-aged him, it never looked like as I was watching.
It is impressive. I will say the effect was less so on Coulson. When a Skrull looks more realistic than a 25-year younger Coulson, you've got an issue. He looked a little plasticky. Yeah, the Fury stuff was pretty impressive. So I'm very happy that you love this movie.
I loved it.
And it excites you going into Endgame.
It does. And let me tell you, I was surrounded in the theater by young girls, families bringing in their daughters.
Their daughters, yeah.
4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old girls, everywhere you looked in the theater that I was in. And
well, let's talk a little bit about that, which this is some of the negative stuff that's out there, which is that this movie has an agenda. And when you dig deep, you realize it was directed by a couple. One is a woman. It was written by a woman. It was scored by a woman. And it was released on International Women's Day. And then you pair that all up with Brie Larson's comments about the press corps being too white. She wanted a little more representation in these people who are covering this movie. And that's where the backlash came from. All these whiny nerd babies that came out of the woodwork and were like, well, I don't like this movie because Brie Larson said it's not for me. And it's like, it's stupid. All the fake negativity surrounding this made me want to like it even more. But 20 minutes in, something is off with this movie for me. I did not like it as much as you did.
Really?
And I am struggling to understand why I don't like it. I can't put my finger on what it was. Now, part of me thinks...
Now, you're going as far to say that you didn't like it. You were not even disappointed.
No. I'm not saying I didn't like it. My expectations weren't even that high, but it didn't do anything for me. It didn't make me excited for the character. I thought she was very one note, almost to the point where I feel that maybe she's miscast, which is weird because, I mean, she's been great in other movies. So, is it the directing? The fact that this all takes place in the 90s, I feel like they went out of their way to make it look like it was filmed in the 90s. Like some of the action sequences just seemed weird to me. I found the soundtrack to be distracting. Even like there's a scene where she's running and she's got this most bizarre running style. And I read a review where someone referred to her as running like a toddler.
But you have to keep in mind that she's also lugging around these boots that probably weigh 30 pounds each.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying I didn't like it. I didn't love it. And so again, my son came home, loved it to the point where he went right back out the next day and saw it with a bunch of other friends who had not seen it yet and liked it even more the second time. So go back to what I said at the beginning of the show, which is I am never going to tell you you're an idiot. I'm jealous, to be honest with you. I didn't like it more, but I don't know why. I don't know what it is that bothers me about this. I mean, and there's some great funny moments. Nick Fury and the damn cat steal this whole movie.
Goose, the cat.
Goose. Played by 4 different cats, by the way.
4 different cats. And in the comic, the cat's name was Chewie. So I'm not really sure why they didn't hold that over.
I don't know. Yeah, because Marvel now owns Star Wars.
I know.
Why not just tie the universe?
But Goose is obviously the Top Gun connection. That's why the cat's name was Goose.
Right.
I'll defend her a bit in this. Okay. I do see where you have that one note complaint that she is an unsmiling, very serious character that doesn't show a lot of personality, but the personality has been wiped from her. She's got no memory of being anything other than a Kree soldier. So she's got not much more going on than Yanrog, who is the most humorless character I think that we've seen.
Yes, correct. So when Talos has more personality than your main, like once you realize that, the Skrulls are not the bad guys, and he becomes humanized, and he, and he's played by Ben Mendelsohn, who's a very well established actor, and to come across as a very likable, I mean, he has a couple nice little zinger joke lines as well. But even at the end, she's so powerful, and there's nothing. I mean, obviously they're setting this up that she is going to be the catalyst to take down Thanos. But nothing. You never really felt like she was in danger in any way, shape, or form. But once she finally taps into these powers at the end, you're missing that kind of giddy superhero moment where she just revels in it. And it's a great scene where she's just flying around decimating these ships. But I wasn't invested.
You see, I got a totally different feel from it. I thought that it did have there was a big buildup, I think, of energy being released, that she's been being held back all this time.
Yeah.
Not being giddy, really, but just a release.
Really coming into her own.
Release. But I think we should give her another chance because, again, the character has just found out who she is and is tapping back in her memories now. So maybe in the next, when we see her
this
again.
is the other thing too. So go down that road for a little bit, which is, how much of these performances are actor based versus director. Look at what George Lucas did or didn't do with his main actors in the prequels. I mean, we know that Ewan McGregor can act. We know that Natalie Portman can act, and yet everything in that movie is wooden. So can the Russo brothers make her more likable for me? I was not. So you go through the end credits, and obviously it ties directly into the end of Infinity Wars. So we now know she's now established as a character in our timeline, not 1990s. Maybe she's more likable. She looks like she didn't age, by the way. So that's interesting.
Right. Yeah, that still have to explain that away.
But like Winter Soldier was on last night, and I'm watching it, and I'm just absolutely blown away by the interaction between, like you talked about, it's a buddy movie. It really is. Nick Fury and Veers, until she realizes who and what she is, and they start calling her Carol. But it just, again, something was just off for me, and I don't know. I thought they tried really hard, too hard, to kind of tie up some loose ends, going out of your way to show what happened to Fury's eye, which is funny. It's actually very funny.
It is.
But again, the Tesseract is...
Yeah, I would have liked if we didn't know what happened to Fury's
Well,
eye.
that's what I'm saying. You don't need to explain everything. That's like, it's like finding out that Anakin built 3PO. Why?
Right,
Why does everything have to be connected?
I was going to say, I just wanted to answer some of your other points about the movie. The 90s aspect of it. You see, I agree that they went out of their way to make it look like it was filmed with that 90s style car chase stuff. But I loved it because it was such a nostalgic trip for me back to those days, those carefree days.
Those carefree days of the 90s.
If you've ever seen because Jeff, I assume
she's wearing the grunge.
Being as old as you are, that you existed in 1995. And so I remember those days fondly. So I don't know if you've ever seen the show Portlandia, but
I have seen, yeah.
In the first season of Portlandia, there's a hilarious opening, I think of the first episode, where Fred Armisen talks in the opening song about the dream of the 90s. And to me, the dream of the 90s was being unemployed or at least employed part-time and only worrying about what's the next CD I'm going to buy or the next movie I'm going to see. And to me, that was the dream of the 90s.
That is, yeah.
And it kind of gets rekindled here with the great 90s soundtrack.
Grunge is a good look for you.
And I love the fact that it was year appropriate. It was a great trip back for 2 hours for me.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that it was set there.
I read a couple things that pointed out, like, when they're in the record store, there's a poster of Smashing Pumpkins.
The Melancholy and the...
Yeah, and that album doesn't come out until like August of that year, and this was supposed to be...
Correct.
That didn't distract me. Even if they had used a song that was probably 2 years later, it wouldn't have bothered me. I don't know. Like I said, I'm having a hard time justifying why I didn't like it. And I don't want to go, the last thing I want to do is give this negativity, because you've now seen it, all over the place. I told you I was right. This movie sucks. It's the end of the Marvel universe. And it's like, shut up. You can't have 30 plus movies and not have one clunker.
Yeah, and I would say the same for Ant-Man. And I'm sure people are burning effigies right now.
Ant-Man's pretty high on my list. So do I need to see it again? Do I need to just... I don't know. The character didn't do it for me, and I'm bummed. I'm actually bummed about it.
Sorry to hear that. I'm really sorry.
I know. I said we wanted to get into it. But can we talk about... So we've gone down this road. To me, the skull plate was an allegory for Mexicans.
You see, I was thinking Israeli-Palestinian type stuff.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that's actually a little more apropos. But I loved that character, Talos. I thought he was a well-established, he was a well-defined character. And I loved the idea that they kind of turned it on its head, that the Krees were the bad guy. And that she had really been working for the wrong side and just didn't know it. So that feeds into our Superman trailer that we talked about, which is, if Superman landed in Russia, he wouldn't know the difference, that everything that he's being taught as a kid is what the rest of the world despises. He would just live it. That's the way he lives. So, but I want to...
You were talking about Ben Mendelsohn as the head Skrull. It was so refreshing to see him in a non-villain role, and just, being able to hit those one-liners like he was. And he was very funny and charming, like as
yes. Once you got, because there are flashbacks and you immediately see him and you think he's the bad guy, gun in his hand, he's pointing it at you, she's getting flashbacks. They capture her and torture her. So you're like, oh, this guy's a dick, but then they did kind of turn it on its head. So that I really liked. What I did loved was the Stan Lee cameo, memoriam kind of tribute at the beginning, which was, if anyone has ever watched any of these Marvel movies that open, especially now when they went with the 10-year kind of opening credit scroll, and you get all the flashes of all the superheroes, but it's been replaced with every one of Stan Lee's cameos leading into the movie. And there's no opening. You don't see, we mentioned the fact that they don't refer to her as Captain Marvel at all. You don't even give a Captain Marvel title until the end credits.
They've been doing that lately with a lot of these Marvel movies.
But I think it's cool because she's not Captain Marvel at the beginning of the movie. She doesn't know who she is. So by the end of the movie, she's established, this is who I am. So I thought that was, whether it was clever or intentional, you're now revealing, boom, this is who I am, Captain Marvel. I now have a purpose in my life. I now know who and what I am and what I'm capable of.
Now, and I think that made Jude Law, as soon as he hit the screen in the beginning, you knew this guy was a jerk from minute one.
Yeah.
So as soon as he started to speak, I'm like, I bet he's the bad guy at the end.
Yeah, right.
He is going to be the bad guy.
Right. And I can't watch it without thinking Sky Captain in the world.
But still, even though that was kind of predetermined for me, I still wasn't seeing the Skrull turnaround at the end.
I thought it was very well done.
With the Skrulls or something, but no, it didn't turn out to be the case.
Did you think the old lady on the bus that was a Skrull was Sally Fields?
No, I didn't.
I swear I thought it was, and I'm like, that's a throwaway thing. But
what's funny is that's one of the things I saw online before this movie came out. Like one of the trolls was saying because that little scene is in one of the trailers where she's punching. What you doing, punching an old lady in the face? You didn't even see the movie.
Right? Yeah. No, that's just crap all over. And that's why I think, and that's why I'm toiling so hard, which is because there's such negativity. I wanted to like it even more. Yeah. Like I said, there's just as many apologists out there that are all over Facebook and all over Instagram that this is the best Marvel movie yet. And I think that's the other end of the spectrum, which I can't support either.
I wouldn't go that far, but I think it's up there. I enjoyed it immensely. Okay. Well, can we talk a little bit more about Goose, the cat?
Yes, because he is he is the heart and soul of this movie.
So now what is going on with Goose? Do you know?
I don't know. The Skrulls are petrified of him. And that was a running joke because Nick Fury was just infatuated and he was like literally taking the cat and putting it in his face. And he's like, what's the matter? You afraid of this? You afraid of this?
Yeah, put it down.
No, as long as you're afraid of it, I'm keeping it here.
Also, we find out that Nick Fury is a cat lover. So, because not only does he put Goose in their face, he's completely loving on this thing every minute.
Yeah.
Aren't you the cutest little Fury?
And so the Skrulls refer to this cat as a flurkin. A flurkin, right?
Yep.
And they're right, because the cat's definitely not a cat. It was like very similar to what Ben in the Umbrella Academy was doing.
Some kind of a kraken hiding inside.
There's some kind of interdimensional creature inside the cat. Yeah.
Or maybe that's his true form and that's never revealed. That's never explained, which I think it was cool. And then you sit through the end credits and there's a nice little...
the cat, at some point during the movie, the Tesseract disappears. And it turns out that Goose the cat has eaten the Tesseract at one point, along with a number of Kree. Does he eat some Skrulls as well?
I don't remember if he ate them, but he did do some serious damage.
And of course, it's revealed, as we said before, that Goose is the one that takes out Nick Fury's eye.
Yeah.
With a simple scratch. It wasn't
a scratch, right. It's just a scratch. And the Skrull's just kind of like
Skrull's like, no, it's not.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Next thing you know, he's got an eye patch. And that was a funny joke. Coulson comes in the end and he has a whole little tray full of fake eyeballs.
Fake eyeballs.
Yeah.
That Fury obviously just disregards because the eye patch is much cooler.
So let's stay on this for 1 second because Winter Soldier was on last night and I cannot pass up watching Winter Soldier. And I'm watching the scene where Captain America is introduced and is having a discussion with Robert Redford, who plays Hobbs. I think his name was Hobbs. And he's like the director, like the high-end director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay. And he's telling Steve Rogers a story that when he met Fury, he was deputy director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he has a picture of the two of them together, and Fury has both eyes. So we have a little bit of a timeline error.
So do we know when this...
Well, he wasn't. Well, we know for a fact in Captain
he was just
Marvel,
an agent. Yeah, he was
an agent, and he now has he was a desk jockey. That's how he described himself, a desk jockey. The movie ends with him with an eye patch and 3 scratches down his eye.
So perhaps that's why they made the effort to show Coulson showing him a bunch of glass eyes. Perhaps he did put one in on occasion.
Maybe. Yeah. It was funny that I just happened to watch that while I was trying to set up last night, and I'm just like, what? Yeah. Like I actually rewound it because it is a kind of a throwaway little picture that Rogers picks up, looks at, and then kind of puts back down. But again, how many of these movies have come and gone that you probably could pick apart the timeline?
Oh, you could. they can't catch everything. There's no way.
No, because they're not. It's not like they sat down and made all these movies at once.
Right,
So,
and it's all by different writers, different directors. So
absolutely. Yeah. But the fact that I had just come out of the theater the day before and then saw that, and I'm just like, son of a.
But how good was it to see Clark Gregg back?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Or is it Greg Clark or Clark Gregg?
Clark Gregg, I believe.
That's the problem with having two first names in your name.
At least he's not hyphenated like last week's episode.
Right.
We had too many names going on there.
But yeah, I've missed him because I haven't watched S.H.I.E.L.D. in quite some time.
No, I know. Unfortunately, I've walked away from it as well. That used to be a staple in my family's house. We watched probably the first 2 seasons religiously. And then it just got to the point where you couldn't keep up. And so I really only have one other note. And this was Stan Lee's second cameo. And it's such a throwaway thing. And I can't even take credit for putting 2 and 2 together. But she's on the bus and she walks by him and he's reading what looks like a script. And I always thought that it was almost like not even him. But I did read that he did film.
He filmed it. If that was him?
This cameo. And you hear him repeating the line, "Trust me, true believer. Trust me, true believer." That's a line that he says in Mallrats.
Yes. Well, you see on the front page of the script, it says Mallrats.
Oh, I missed it. I missed it. That's what I missed.
Yeah, even the logo.
Kevin
of
Smith
the poster,
is like losing his mind right now on Instagram that he got a shout out in the Marvel Universe establishing that Stan Lee.
So I would be excited too because in the Marvel Universe, Kevin Smith exists. So
so kudos. And that was something I did not catch, but after putting it together, and I'm just like, wow. And that was 95. So
it was.
I just don't believe that Stan Lee would be riding a bus to
Although, if you think about it, Mallrats came out in 95. So I would think that maybe he would have already, But
how big was his role in Mallrats? He could do it one day.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah,
and I wanted to bring up...
Parsing.
Let's bring back up Ronan, the accuser, for a second.
Yes.
Jan Rog, Jude Law, has him on speed dial.
Right.
And whenever he brings up Ronan, he's already in the battle position. Every time that Ronan comes up.
Well, he's just waiting for that phone call.
He's standing there, like with his hammer, like, you better call me quick because my arm's getting tired here.
Well, you remember those old Jetson commercials? Whenever Jane Jetson would get a phone call and she'd have like face cream in her hair, the fake face in front of her for the video camera. So maybe
what if Ronan was on the toilet? Maybe that's
Well, maybe that was just his go-to stand. Maybe that's how he poops. Who knows? So there you go. I'm not going to tell you don't go see this because obviously it fits in. It's a good movie. Yeah. It's just I have my issues with it.
But I think you should definitely go see this. I think it's a great movie.
There you go. So let's
bucket
level.
I'm going to go 4 buckets on this. 4 solid buckets on this. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think if you have any investment in these movies, I think you'll like it too.
3.
Okay,
I'm maybe convinced to go. If I see it again, it's pretty low on my Marvel list.
No, I'm down with Ben. Ben saw something in this.
But again, I'm never gonna tell you that you're wrong.
See, I'm curious as to his take on it, why he liked it so much. Because obviously the 90s stuff, right?
Over his head, right?
That would be over his head, that whole feeling. But
I don't know if it'd be over his head. He probably would maybe get a chuckle, but he was, there's some part of it is also audience participation. Because he said both of his screenings, people were, cheering during the opening Stan Lee tribute. A couple times he said they were clapping. So sometimes you get caught up in that. I mean, we get caught up in it on the show when we sometimes give buckets and you're like, oh, these guys are giving it 4.5. I might have to step up my game a little bit. That plays into it. If you come out of a movie and everyone else you're with loves it, maybe you're like, all right, maybe I should like it a little bit more. I don't know.
Now, going down that route, I had mentioned before that my theater was filled with families with their young girls. And I was expecting the theater to be raucous when I walked in throughout the whole thing and to the point of distraction. And it was like a pin drop throughout the entire movie. Yeah. The Stan Lee thing, that got didn't get applause or anything, but I think everybody was really jazzed leaving this. And I saw it at an AMC. I was probably about an hour from home, so I saw it in Middletown, New York, which is not my neck of the woods. We have Regal right around where I live here, and this was an AMC theater, which was a new experience for me. They have reclining chairs. It was wonderful.
It's different. I know. My Regal, that's my go-to only because it's like 2 minutes from my house. But yeah, I've been to some of these other theaters with the recliners, and they've got the, you can order your food right to your It's a little.
Yeah,
it's a
and
little
it was
much.
great because when you bought tickets online, you reserved specific.
Yes, you reserved.
like
Yeah.
a concert.
When I saw Solo down in Jersey, you walk in. There's a little kiosk right there. You see the entire floor plan, what seats are already sold, and you pick your seat. There you go.
Yeah.
Just like Ticketmaster back in the day.
So that was nice. That really added to my experience as well as.
Yeah. And here's the other thing too, which was sitting through the credits. You get the first one pretty early on, and then you have to sit all the way through the end credit for the last one. And someone behind me said, "Oh, we can't leave. There's a second stinger." I've never heard them refer to it as
stinger.
A stinger. And
I think that might be their own term. That's
a new one for me. But it was enough for me to make a note on it because I'm like, stinger. Should we use that?
So Jeff, you said you know a guy at the concession stand. Should we go visit him now?
Yes. Yes.
Let's tell him to layer that butter.
That's right.
All aboard the snack bar special for Coca-Cola, peanuts, hot dogs, ice cream, candy. That's the snack bar special for Coca-Cola, peanuts, hot dogs. Whatever your choice from the snack bar, things go better with Coke.
As you may have figured out by now, Mike is not with us this week.
Oh, I just thought his microphone was off again.
He's having mic problems again.
Mike, we have mic issues.
It's unfortunate that he's not here because not only would we, of course, love to hear his take on
I'm dying to see what his take is.
But this classic feature was his pick for that movie that you loved from way back when that nobody has ever heard of.
Which I love the fact, because if you look at this movie poster, it's just straight up selling sex.
But from the car to, Annie Potts, the side.
Oh my God, Annie Potts' little titties are just hanging out all over Luke's lightsaber.
Now let's talk about the tenuous connection between Captain Marvel and Corvette Summer.
You attempted to.
I attempted it because if you look at Captain Marvel's outfit, like the outfit that she ends up with, the yellow, red, and blue,
right,
and you put this poster of Captain Marvel right next to the poster of Corvette Summer, just the color scheme kind of matches up. The red. So when I saw that, and then Mike picking that Corvette Summer, I thought it would be a nice visual, if nothing else, for Jeff to work with his Instagram pairing of those two posters. Yeah. So that's where my head was at when I was thinking maybe Corvette Summer would fit in with Captain Marvel.
And the tagline works as well, because the tagline for Corvette Summer is the most turbocharged, chrome-plated, plush-lined, high-gloss, super speed, customized time of your life.
There you go.
For people like you who loved Captain Marvel, I think that's apropos.
And I think the trailer of Corvette Summer, if I'm not mistaken, called it a fiberglass comedy or something.
Fiberglass romance.
Fiberglass romance.
I think that's yeah. I think originally it was going to be called Stingray, and then that was taken. Another movie came out like right before it, so they changed it. Mark Hamill, I read somewhere, was not crazy about the title because it really didn't have anything to do about the car. It was a love story, whatever.
But at the same time, I think that there's a certain genre of film for the car enthusiasts out there.
Well, and they all took place in like the 70s.
Right. You've got your Cannonball Run. You've got your Smokey and the Bandit. Mostly, I think, directed by Hal Needham. He probably directed them all. Convoy, Hooper, about the stuntman.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You know what? We didn't mention Jan Michael Vincent.
And he just passed away.
He did. Of Airwolf fame and Hooper fame. Yeah. Yep. I think it's extremely apropos to name this Corvette Summer.
Correct.
And I think we can speak to Mike's choice of this because he did, to some extent, on the confessional where we actually brought these titles out. Back in 1978, and I can attest to this, you were looking for anything Star Wars at that point. Star Wars was the hit of 77. But you really wanted more, and you really didn't have much on the horizon.
No.
Empire wasn't going to come out for years, right?
Holiday Special was in Thanksgiving of 78.
Luke Skywalker being in a PG movie, comedy that you could go see, was the closest thing you had to getting that Star Wars fix.
Yeah. I went back. I remember as a kid going back and watching Great Expectations with Alec Guinness in it. Watching A Great White Hope with James Earl Jones, who kills it in that movie, by the way. He's like so rockin' tight, muscled, and so any little connection, tenuous at best,
So if this movie was starring like some other 70s teen throb like Leif Garrett or Michael Paré or something, it would be even further into obscurity than it is today. But I think the fact that Luke Skywalker is in it really cements it in cinematic history.
Yeah.
MGM presents Corvette Summer, starring Mark Hamill, who's back from Star Wars. Oh yeah! And Annie Potts, who's out of this world.
And he's not bad. You know, he plays like a callow youth, like very much like Luke, but maybe not as intelligent as Luke.
He is definitely a simpleton. That is for sure.
He is, yes. He's rocking that late 70s long hair.
Yeah, we all lament that. I wish my hair looked like that now.
It's an entertaining little slice of its time, I think.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, actually.
So the plot line is really basic. A high school shop class.
Which I want to be in that shop class. They build a car? You build a car?
They're doing this project throughout the course of the school year. They go to the junkyard at the beginning of the movie, and some of the classmates, Danny Bonaducci is in there.
Yeah, there's a great scene where Luke Skywalker beats the crap out of Danny Partridge. Coots. His name was Coots.
And then we've got Wendy Jo Sperber in there.
She has a nice little show up in that. There's a couple. There's definitely a couple like actors who are just all over the landscape in the 70s and 80s. Every TV show ever made, you've seen.
Jeff, I know that Wendy Jo is dear to your heart from Back to the Future, right? Back to the
Future, but also
I love her from 1941.
Oh, see, I'll go Bosom Buddies.
Oh, Bosom Buddies.
Because Bosom Buddies was my show back in the day, man. That was revolutionary.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that she had passed as well.
She passed away a couple years ago.
So we have this high school class that's they choose a Corvette to save from the junkyard. There's a great scene in the very beginning where Mark Hamill literally saves it from being crushed right as it's being lowered into the crusher.
And I had a really hard time getting his name because it was all like, is it Bentley? Was it Dentley? Was
Dantley.
it
Kenny
Dantley?
Dantley, yeah.
Dantley.
It's a very awkward name, yeah.
Yeah, Keith is his first name, but they just kept referring to him by his last name.
No, Kenny is his first name. Kenny.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said Keith. Yes, I did see the movie.
I think you're thinking of the Partridge Family now. You're thinking of Bonaducci and
Bonaducci. Yeah.
In the first 10 minutes, there's like a montage of this class rebuilding this Corvette. And at the end, it's this supercharged, red, beautiful car that's got lightning bolts down the side of it, that after they successfully rebuild it, of course, they want to drive it down Van Nuys Boulevard in California for one night. Right. Very a la American Graffiti. So every member of the shop class takes a turn driving it up and down the boulevard.
Which is just a weird... Do I need a note for that to go?
Is this a
Mom
sanctioned?
Right.
Stay up till 3 a.m. down on the boulevard, down on the strip, so we can run the car up and down.
Yeah.
So of course, each of the classmates has their turn with the car, and then we get to Danny Bonaducci, who they don't want to let Coots drive the car.
Come on, are we gonna let this little creep wreck it?
Yeah, why should you drive it, jerk? You never worked on it.
Hey, I helped. I got it right. Come on, let him drive it.
He's like, I got it right, man. I got it right. And then Mark Hamill is the one. Dantley is the one that says, let him drive it. Let him drive it. And then somebody says, get us Cokes. Get us some Coke.
The coach, the teacher, Mr. McGantley. What was his name? McGrath. Mr. McGrath.
So they tell Danny Bonaducci, get us Cokes. First of all, don't let Danny Bonaducci drive your pristine Corvette. And then don't trust him with your money. Second,
and how are you gonna come back with all those Cokes?
I know.
You're gonna have to lay him in the seat.
So he leaves to get the Cokes, and he doesn't come back. Hours go by, apparently. Right. And they're thinking, oh, he dropped the Cokes on the front seat. He's afraid to come back. And then he shows up on foot with the Cokes. With a defeated look on his face. And it turns out that somebody stole the car out from under him while he was getting the Cokes.
And it smells like an inside job right from the very beginning. Oh, when you're talking about the street scene, the American Graffiti looking with all the street hot rod cars are zooming up and down. There's a guy on a motorcycle, and he has a Coors can taped to his helmet. So I guess back in the day before there was GoPro, there was Coors Pro. It's like, is that the equivalent of beer goggles?
Yeah,
like it was a can.
Straw? Did he have a straw?
No, there was no straw. No. They're not going to promote drinking and driving.
this scene leads up to one of the best lines in the movie. They're with the cops, right? And Danny's trying to explain what happened. He's like, I took the keys. The keys weren't even in it. I don't know how they got it. And then he says, but you guys told me to get the Cokes. And then Mark Hamill, the best line in the movie.
You said get Cokes. We didn't want no Cokes. Who said I was thirsty? Want my car.
I think he's,
But you're the one who let him go.
I wasn't even thirsty.
Mm.
So, yeah, and he's the one that let him drive it. Yes, Jeff, you're right.
Yeah, he does have more emotion in this than all the Jedi, by the way.
He does. He absolutely does. He crushes the Coke and it explodes in his hand.
He does use the Force a couple times in this movie.
Yeah,
I kept waiting for him to want to go into Tossie Station to pick up.
I think to drop Annie Potts' towel, he used the Force.
Oh my! She is damn cute in this movie.
And it's funny because I had no memory of her being in this, and I thought like Ghostbusters was the first thing that she showed up in. But
no,
she was actually nominated for a Golden Globe for this movie.
Is this where Marissa Tomei stole her?
I think it was. This must
My Cousin Vinny, who also was nominated.
I know. I was thinking this must have been a very slow year for the awards season.
That's
He
weird.
was nominated for this.
Wow, if any female out there wants an Academy Award, just repeat this performance because it's worked twice already.
So the plot of Corvette Summer from there, it's very promising from that point because now Dantley, Mark Hamill, makes it his mission to find this car, who stole the car. So you're kind of set up for like maybe a cross-country cannonball run type thing, or it's a mad, mad, mad world where, you know, you're trying to find out who done it, but
Right.
it leads him directly to Vegas, to Las Vegas, and that's where he stays for the entire movie. So I was hoping, because I had no memory of this at all when I watched it this week for the podcast. The last time I had seen it was probably 78 or 79.
Okay, yeah, it's been a while for me too.
So I was a little disappointed that it wasn't more like of a chase type movie where he ends up in Las Vegas on a tip that somebody's seen the car there.
Right, only to find out that it's
a
not.
Datsun.
It's a Datsun. It's a Datsun. It's a
That's
Datsun.
painted exactly like they painted the Corvette.
So yeah, it's a lot of random scenes of awkwardness followed by short frenetic car chases. He sees it, he runs,
But it turns out it is in Las Vegas after all, and he sees it every once in a while because he ends up moving there for the summer. He stays, he gets jobs here and there, and he sees it around town.
It's a running joke too that whether he's working at the car wash or if he's working as a valet, he's always got a name tag that's not his own. He has like numerous different names, and it's kind of funny. But this girl Vanessa that he ends up hooking up with, she's a hooker in training.
Of course, the hooker with a heart of gold, right?
The hooker with a heart of gold, which I guess Julia Roberts saw this movie as well and said, I can do that. But she is absolutely adorable. She's a fun character. And she takes him in. Obviously, Obi-Wan never prepared him for this because...
absolutely. He has no idea what to do.
No. And it's kind of fun to see old school Las Vegas. You know, you're watching this movie, but you're really kind of looking over his shoulder at all of the old marquees with Jerry Lewis, and you got...
you see the Golden Nugget marquee.
Clark, we had an ensemble thing going on there. It's like a throwaway era.
Now, as we were talking about, there is a potpourri of B-list stars in this that you remember, and I think the brightest of which is Dick Miller as Mr. Lucky.
Mr. Lucky. Well, didn't he introduce himself as Gladstone Duck?
Did he? Really?
That was his name. I wrote it down, but then when I looked it up on IMDb, they list him as Mr. Lucky. Yeah, and he ends up giving Kenny a $2 bill. That was his lucky $2 bill.
Because he hit it big that night because somebody steals his wallet his first night in Vegas. He's at a burger joint and he can't pay for the burgers. And then this guy played by Dick Miller, who has just won the big jackpot, buys him his food and gives him his...
Oh, that's right. He buys him the food. Yeah, because he realizes that he got scammed and somebody stole his wallet.
Yep.
But you're right. This guy is all over every 70s and 80s TV show. Like when you see him, you immediately like, I know him. And then when you look him up, you're like, Dick Miller? Who the hell is this?
But at this point, like for me, he's the guy from Gremlins.
That's true. Yes.
You know, they're still shipping them over here. Put them in the cars, they put them in the TV, they put them in the stereos or the radios you stick in your ears. They put them in your watches. They got little teeny gremlins for watches.
I don't think it's such a good idea that you drive. Why don't you walk home?
Yep.
So we've got him. We've got Brian James, who famously played Leon in Blade Runner, and he had the trailer moment in Blade Runner.
Wake up, time to die.
Also the general in Fifth Element.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Yeah. So, but he's done, again, numerous shows that you've seen a thousand times. Brian James.
And of course, we've already mentioned Danny Bonaducci. We mentioned Wendy Jo Sperber. And I would like to give a shout out to Kim Milford. Apparently in the 70s, the name Kim was big for males as well as females. So he plays the head of the stolen car ring, the blonde.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Now, the interesting thing about Kim Milford is that the previous year he starred in the movie Laser Blast, which was a B, C, D type movie. It was definitely riding on the tails of Star Wars. He plays a kid that finds an alien pendant in the desert, puts it on, and slowly starts turning into an alien himself. And with the pendant, he finds a laser cannon that he fits on his arm. And the aliens that left it in the middle of the desert have to come back by the end of the movie and have a shootout with him to get their gun back.
And what is the name of this movie?
Laser Blast. And it also stars Roddy McDowall in a small.
Oh, really?
And there's at one point, this is not
check that out.
And it's got Eddie Deason as well, also from 1941. There's one point in Laser Blast, and I would really love to watch this as one of our classic features one of these days. This is like a borderline sci-fi horror movie because as he turns into like an alien being, he like gets green skin and sharp teeth, and he looks pretty horrific. But there's one point where he's driving as an alien in a van, not down by the river, but on off the side of the road, he finds the van. So he's got the laser cannon in one hand, he's driving the van in the other, and he's going by a billboard for Star Wars. And now this movie came out in 77, so I assume it was filmed during the summer of 77 when Star Wars filmed. He drives by a billboard, he leans his laser gun out and destroys the billboard for a second.
Oh, really?
Obvious reference.
Yeah. Screw you, you know we're ripping you off.
And the next year, here he is starring with Mark Hamill in this movie, Corvette Summer.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because there's actually a couple Star Wars connections in this. I don't know if you caught one, which was obvious, and one not so obvious.
Let's hear him. Let's hear him.
So when Kenny finally finds his car, and he realizes these guys have stolen it, and that's what's his name, Brian James. He chases them down. There's a great scene where he steals this kid's 10-speed bike, and he's chasing after this car. And I think he uses the Force to actually catch that Winnebago, because there's no other way that you're going to catch up to that thing. He crashes, and they capture him, and they stick him in a garage, and they lock the door. And now he's trapped. And the guy protecting or guarding the door is reading a Star Wars comic.
Really? I didn't catch that.
It was hard for me to see the cover, but I think it was issue number 6 of the Marvel Star Wars. So that was like, okay, you kind of threw that in there. The only other connection really is the guy who bought Vanessa's van. His name is Morgan Upton, is the actor. He did one of the Stormtrooper voices.
One of the what voices?
Stormtroopers.
The Stormtroopers. Was he the set for stun guy?
There's one set for stun.
I don't know if he was set for stun. I don't know what his line of dialogue was, but yeah, because not many Stormtroopers really. Oh, no, that's not true. There was a couple. Yeah, the Star Wars comic was a little more out there, but otherwise I didn't really see any. Other than the fact that when he was hiding in the barrel of oil, when he came out, I said, "Oh, that's Tar Wars." But, but other than that, I really
now, do you think that Mark Hamill signed that comic on set?
I doubt it. It was pretty beat up. The guy was like rolling the cover back, and I'm like, "Oh, that's worthless now." I like this. I like this movie a lot. I thought it was fun. It kept me
entertaining. Yeah, it was entertaining.
Although you find out that the shop teacher is really kind of a douchebag, and
to supplement his meager earnings as
$15,000. That's how can you survive?
Yeah, I know.
He tells Kenny that he makes $15,000, and yet he now works for these bad guys, and they immediately offer Kenny a job, making $750 a week.
But how can this guy get his hands on other cars? You could see how he sold him the Corvette, but like, how is he their connection? And
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. How fast can your shop class build new cars just so you can steal them?
So you now know at that point how the car is stolen when Danny Bonaducci has the keys in his pocket. Obviously, it's the teacher that gives the bad guys the keys.
And if you weren't connecting the dots, McGrath shows up in Vegas and he takes Kenny. He's driving a Silverado, and the car was stolen and is at the Silverado auto body. So I'm like, oh, just in case you pay too close attention, we're gonna connect the dots there for you. But yeah, and Kenny wants nothing. He just wants his car. But it really is a love story between him and Annie Potts, and the fact that, he comes to care for her and she cares for him. Obviously, they have sex, but she doesn't understand the whole car thing. And they end up parting ways or whatever. And he renegotiates with the bad guys. He's in a position. So he says, I want $850 a week. And I want first week up front. So he immediately becomes a jerk because he has money. And he goes and he buys her this elaborate dress and he takes her to a hotel room or whatever. But yeah, money made Kenny a dick. Yeah, but then he realizes that he wants the car after all. And he spends all night repainting it. Mm-hmm. And then bad guys come in and he immediately starts throwing heavy tools over it. I'm like, you're going to chip that thing. And then there's this great car chase scene. 1 minute it's dirty, then it's clean, then it's dirty again because the continuity editor, I guess, was just out of their minds. They probably just filmed it chasing a couple times and sliced it together. So there's certain scenes where this car is completely covered in dirt and dust. And then there's other scenes where it's pristine. One right after the other.
I just hope that Dantley saw what Bonaducci saw in the beginning, that really Coke is it. That's all Bonaducci wanted was some Cokes. That's all.
Cokes.
Who can blame him? So so at the end of the movie, of course, he gets the car back. He prevails over the bad guys and returns the car to the high school. It's kind of anticlimactic in that it's not his car. It never really is his car.
And there's a great scene where she realizes, she reads the newspaper article he's been carrying around, Vanessa, and she's like, it's not even your car. And that squealy voice of hers. It's pretty funny.
And that's not a put on, really, because she talks that way in everything I've seen.
Everything, yeah.
Ghostbusters, Pretty in Pink, right? I don't know what else.
When they were on the run, I thought they should have just headed to Radiator Springs. And I thought I saw a Tomater there at one point. But,
off in the distance?
Off in the distance, yes.
Yeah. So it was enjoyable. In the 70s soundtrack, there's like a lot of Wacka Wacka guitars going on.
Yeah, man. Made you want to break onto the hustle, right?
Yeah. It was it was like the same soundtrack as a Love Boat episode.
Yep.
Another nostalgia trip, I thought.
It was fun. It was fun to go down. Yeah. Both leads actually were in car accidents going into production on this. Obviously, we know about Mark Hamill. He was in a car accident and he broke his nose. But Annie Potts was also in a car accident. She had pins in her legs.
Really?
At one point, yeah. And Fran Drescher was in this, but her scenes were cut.
Oh. And
so you would have had two annoying voices.
Are they in the same scene together?
I hope not. That would have been overload.
And from what I understand, this was a box office success on its
own. Was it? Yeah, okay.
It cost $9 million to make, and it grossed $36 million. Wow. Mostly on Mark Hamill's name, probably.
There you go. Well, what's not to like about it? It's Luke Skywalker and a red stingray.
So how many buckets are we thinking for this?
I'm going to go higher than I did on Captain Marvel. Maybe 3.5.
I'd go 3.
I go 3.5 for the nostalgia of it. 3. We can share the fact that, by and large, we try to get most of our movies, if not in our own private collection, via the library. And it became apparent that none of our libraries carried this, which is just a shame. And we had to resort to iTunes and Google Play. Is that where you found yours?
I did Google Play. You did iTunes.
Yeah. $2.99 worth a watch.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the high definition, it was pretty clean. I was impressed with it. I had one other joke, which was when he was riding his bike, and he crashes into the big pile. So he must have been really tired at the end there.
We need that snare drum for that one.
Yes, where's Harrison?
Try the veal.
He was tired out. There you go.
Yeah.
Corvette Summer.
We're going to have to get Mike's take on this too.
I know, because he'll be like, oh, I didn't watch it.
Yeah, of course. This leads into our confessional this week.
Confessionals.
It's a car-themed confessional. What is our favorite TV show, movie, pop culture vehicle? And Jeff?
Yeah. Well,
Jeff, if you don't say what I think you're going to say, I'm going to be so disappointed.
Well, I'm going to go with the DeLorean, which I'm not going to go with because again, like you said, you can't go to the well. You got to be fresh. I can't just the DeLorean is my go-to vehicle.
Of course.
But I'm going to go a little more obscure. And this was a cool car that I saw as a kid, and it was on a TV show. I think they only lasted like 3 seasons.
Yeah.
The Monkey Mobile.
Ooh.
It's a Pontiac GTO, but it had the giant monster engine on the outside. It was a convertible, but it had 3 rows of seating. It didn't have 2, it had 3.
Yes.
And so they were like light years ahead of the Mommobiles that we have now, the vans. Oh, and it had a parachute.
It did, with the Kellogg's logo on the parachute.
There
if you've
you
ever
go.
seen
So
that
nice,
thing come out, yeah.
That was a nice little promotional tie-in. So it's a cool car. I think they built 2. One's in the hands of a collector. The other one, I'm trying to remember now where it ended up, but it was somewhere overseas, and no one really seems to be able to tell a true story as how it got there.
Coincidentally, tonight, as we're recording this evening, I'm going up to Albany to see Mickey Dolenz and Mike Nesmith.
Are you? Wow.
Play at the Palace Theater. So
Wow.
I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm a huge Monkees fan.
Yeah. I thought of you yesterday. I was at there was a sports card show, but there's a bunch of non-sports stuff, guys. And they had these oversized cards. Peter Tork, Michael Nesmith, and Davy Jones all had signed the 3. There wasn't the 4th one. I didn't even ask what the price ask was on it, but I'm sure that it was.
Yeah. Now, I've seen them together and solo many times over the years, and I've acquired Mickey's autograph and Peter's autograph. But
oh, wow. Okay.
Never got Mike or Davy's.
Davy, yeah.
I also have two choices came to mind. The first one I'm going to go with is Christine from Steven.
Oh,
now
the possessed version? You want the possessed version, right?
The possessed version. Now, this is my favorite novel, hands down. The movie is just
it's
pretty
it
much
doesn't live up to
it's a very pale cousin, I'd want to say, of the novel.
No, it was neutered. It was very neutered.
Completely. The book is just so powerful. I've read the book so many times as a kid.
Was his name Archie?
Arnie. No, his name was Arnie. Yeah.
Arnie. So you look at me like you're shocked that I knew that.
I am.
I read that book.
So Christine is my number 1 pick, and I'm going to the TV well, like you, for my number 2.
Okay.
This is a more obscure. I'm going to go Sid and Marty Krofft, the Bugaloos car.
Oh, crap. Was that like a buggy?
It was like a buggy, but made to look like a bug. I think it had wings on the side. It was just a very bizarre looking.
Well, I remember the Bugaloo. Well, the whole Bugaloos were bizarre. There were some serious drugs going on with those guys.
But again, it was kind of similar to the Monkees, where it was like a manufactured group. I think that they were hoping for like a Monkees Mach 2, but the Bugaloos never really made it past the 7-8-year-olds from Saturday Morning. But yeah, it was a very nice looking car.
I would have thought you would have gone down the James Bond Aston Martin.
Again too obvious.
I know. See, yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
Cool.
I did have the little corgi version when I was a kid of the Aston Martin. It actually had, if you pressed a button, the
missiles
popped up.
Oh, no missiles fired?
No missiles, but it did have the bulletproof shield in the back if you hit the button in the back. And the little guns came out the front.
Did you know it was bulletproof? Did you actually test it?
Well, no, just from watching Thunderball, I assumed that it was. But I never.
You've never actually tested it in the field.
It's a preview of next week. I don't really know what to say here because
we're gonna be flying by the seat of our pants.
I know we could say that it's a secret, but I don't think it's a secret.
It's a secret to us.
The episode that you are listening to is our 49th episode, which means next week is going to be our big 50th anniversary. But as to what that's going to be, I think that's still in its
incubation stage,
in its fetal stage. Yeah.
There you go.
So we could go the route of 50 years of TV, 50 years of sci-fi in general, or we could do a sequel to our Saturday morning cartoon show, which has been something that's been asked for from our handful of fans. Every once in a while, somebody will ask me, "What about you should do some more cartoons?"
I'm down for the cartoons.
Yeah, because we never really went the after school route because that's a whole different beast than Saturday morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe we'll do that, but believe me, it'll be interesting, whatever it is, as we always are. We like to hold your interest. We like to make you laugh.
We try.
We like to try to make you listen to the entire show if we can help it, rather than 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there.
There you go.
Come back with us next week, our 50th anniversary. All those listeners out there, thank you. If you're hanging in there from episode 1, thank you so much.
If you made it through those first 15, 10,
those early episodes, talk about in fetal stages. Those were rough, I think.
Well, I'd like to think in the next 50 episodes that we'd be even more
polished and
more polished.
Than we are now. Yeah.
Yes, I'd stop with the mouth popping and my every sentence. And we will have Mike back. Is that true?
I think we will, unless he deems it a subject that he doesn't want to speak on anymore.
That's actually what I was getting at, because I think Mike was very happy to not talk cartoons last go round.
So it's going to be a potpourri of subjects, I'm sure, next week.
Yeah, but that's, we switch it up. We change it up. We might as well just call it the rabbit hole. And just whatever gets thrown out there, we can probably talk at it. Looking
forward to next week, Jeff, as always. So.
I am, yes. Me as well. And thanks again for listening.
Yes. If you want to mention to us directly that you liked the show, that you didn't like the show, please email us, tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. Again, tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
Lines are open.
All right.
That's it.
Have a good week.
Yep, you too. Ciao.
Bye.
I will tell you what happens in Captain Marvel. You ready? Here goes. Enough is enough! I have had it with these snakes on this plane!
I didn't want no cokes! Who said I was thirsty?